This is a test just to show that my LeakDown test gauge is working. Watch the gauge on the right hand side. So we're up to about 80 pounds. That's about all I can hold. That's down to 0. Glare on this thing is terrible. Watch the needle. Can't read the gauge, but that's sitting right at. I can only hold 80 pounds. And for a few seconds, but you can see that the gauge is operable. So this proves that my hose is not leaking. Take the hose out of the equation, we're right up at the same pressure as the other gauge. Okay, it's October 21st. I'm about to do a LeakDown test on the new stroker engine that I bought from BluePrint engines. Right now I'm going to do cylinder number 1. First I'll show you the LeakDown tester. I have a regulator here. I have an orifice here of 40 thousandths of an inch. I have another gauge here, and I have a quick connector, typical compression hose connector, that goes into a pipe or hose that goes down to cylinder number 1. Okay, so I'll show you this gauge is calibrated. We'll crank up this regulator up to 80 pounds or 75 pounds. I think is as high as it'll go. That's my compressor's limit. You can see we're reading 75 pounds on the other gauge as well. So I crank it back down to 0. Takes a couple of minutes for this to lose its pressure. You see it's going down real slow. It'll go down real slow when I plug this hose in. Okay, so we have the tester hooked up. I'll crank up my pressure. Right here will be the air pressure going into the cylinder, and this, when it goes through this orifice, it slows down the air so it can't pump this up as rapidly. This will pump up to its maximum pressure, which should equal or be within 10% of this gauge. So let's see what happens. Okay, our gauges are going up. It's going to take a few minutes. I let it go for 5 minutes before. Right now it's showing the same amount of leakage that I had before. You can see on this gauge I'm showing barely 10%. Sorry about the focus, it's a little difficult to get it in there. But that means that only 10% of that cylinder is holding the air that it's supposed to be holding. So what we can do is we can tell whether or not we have a leak at the exhaust system by taking the exhaust out back. The carburetor, you'll hear sounds leaking through here. You may not with that diesel going by, but okay. Now we can listen inside the carburetor. There's nothing. We don't hear anything down here at the cylinder where this hose goes in. So next we come over to the dipstick tube. And I have a transmission funnel hooked up onto that so I can hear it. I can't get my head in there. And if we listen in here, you can hear the air leaking. Come back to the exhaust. Perfectly quiet. Perfectly quiet. So the dipstick tube is pumping oil out predominantly because of leakage in cylinder number 1 so far. That's the first one that I checked. We've been on here for a couple of minutes now. We're 70 pounds in here, which should match here. We're still at nothing but 10%. So we got a bad cylinder in number 1. We're on cylinder number 2. 4 minutes at 80 pounds, or 78 pounds actually, and we're at 10%. So, we listen to the carburetor. Nothing. We're listening to the dipstick tube. Oh boy, here we go again. So 90% of the compression is going into that crankcase. Okay, we've done a leak down test on cylinder number 2. I put a balloon over the dipstick tube. You notice it's totally deflated. I'm going to crank up the pressure. And here we go. This is cylinder number 2. Now this balloon is leaking. I don't have a good tight seal. I can hear it leaking a little bit, but you can see there's pressure there. I'll take the pressure off here. And watch the balloon. Okay, we got no pressure. Balloon is out. Put more pressure in. See the wrinkles in the balloon there. Watch this as the pressure comes in. There it goes. Yeah. We got water, oil, air, and a dipstick. Okay. We're doing a leak down test on cylinder number 4. Again, I'll turn this around so you can see the gauge. We're at 70 pounds and we're at 10%. I can hear a distinct loud noise coming out of the dipstick tube. Oh great, we got a car going by. Okay, come back here and you can hear it. Okay, cylinder number 4 is blowing oil out of the dipstick tube. Okay, we're on cylinder number 6 now. My compressor turned on, so I have 90 pounds to work with this time. And we're looking at, I can't get a focus on this, but we're looking at 15 pounds. So in other words, I'm getting 15% of the pressure on top of this cylinder after 3 minutes. That does not compute. That cylinder is helping pump oil out this dipstick tube. Once again, after the car goes by, again, you can hear the noise inside the dipstick tube. Nothing inside the carburetor, nothing inside the exhaust. And there's also nothing going on inside the radiator. So we know the head gasket's good, we know the valves are good, we know that the rings are bad. They're passing air right through to the crankcase. Another reason why dipstick tube is flowing out like a geyser. Okay, leak down test on cylinder number 7. We've been on for 4 minutes. We're at 90 pounds, well actually 85 pounds on the main gauge, and we're only showing 15 on the small. So we're getting 15% of the pressure in cylinder number 7. Carburetor's quiet. The exhaust, I walk to the back, that's quiet. Again, inside the tube, we have leakage. Not as severe as the other 2 cylinders, but it's still leakage, contributing to that dipstick tube blowing up.